Hello and welcome to UX Leadership by Design. I'm Mark Baldino, your host. I'm also the co-founder of Fuzzy Math. Fuzzy Math is the user experience design consultancy that brings consumer-grade UX to business applications for B2B and enterprise tools. Today I speak with Jared Dolan, who has 25 plus years experience as a UX product designer and now serves as a player coach and a fractional senior product leader. First, we discuss like what the heck is fractional leadership, but also like what are the warning signs? What are the alarm bells within an organization that might signify that you need a fractional leader? That you not only have a problem, but one that's big enough to bring in this type of individual. It's generally an acute problem and it requires change. And that change is being forced upon by sort of external or internal forces. And the change must happen quickly through somebody who can kind of, quote, hit the ground running. And Jared shares best practices for the work that he does, which guides organizations through these changes, assessing the problem, righting the ship, getting teams aligned, and kind of moving forward. And frankly, there's a lot of overlap with the role that I personally serve on projects with my clients, which is to kind of get in quickly, do this listening exercise, be empathetic, understand the problem, and help kind of align and drive them for change. So the conversation is chock full of useful tips for people in product and design leadership. We discuss a few great frameworks along the way. So thanks for listening, and please enjoy. Jared, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Mark. Appreciate you having me.
No, I appreciate you joining and spending some time with me. And I know the audience is going to appreciate the conversation, as is traditional, should be every podcast, but certainly on this one. Give the audience a sense of your background, how you got to where you are, and kind of a high level what you're up to these days.
Sure. Well, currently, I'm basically out there in the market as a principal product designer and from a contract standpoint, engagement and fractional design leader. So my past is that came up through corporate branding, actually. Got into that world and then moved my way into digital. And the natural tendency was to move towards the strategy. And as we got into the digital world, what did that mean in the different roles? And as the industry matured, so I was able to work with quite a few projects, which were everything from being self-employed and working with startups, working with mid-sized companies, and then working on some global brands as well, and national brands here in Canada. Um, and it's been a wonderful experience, and still enjoy it, and loved what I do every day.
Fantastic, and a good kind of journey outside of product management into product management.
Yeah.
There are a lot of folks out there who provide kind of fractional
Mhm.
support for organizations. What what does it mean for maybe folks who haven't heard the term or have heard it and not sure what what it actually means kind of in detail? And how is it different as an alternative to maybe a traditional, I guess, like a full time hire or something like that in that role?
Yeah, it's similar to the rest of this industry as things change and evolve over the years. The terms and the positioning changes, but there is some important changes that have come out of this role. First of all, fractional leaders tend to be somebody who's got quite a bit of experience under their belt. We're talking 20 or 30 years worth of experience, and blending strategic as well as operational. So nothing wrong with other types of engagements, but this is what fractional really means too, especially from our business side of our colleagues. And basically, you're brought in a part-time or as needed basis, and you're offering an effective solution basically to a business who has a particular problem at a certain time of uncertainty. And fractional leaders basically are able to come in, work with senior leadership, and enable the business to access expertise without the full-time commitment. And rather than them having to double down on trying to find a very senior leader who can't fit
Yeah.
maybe all the check marks, somebody who can come in a short-term basis and really uh, land with their feet running and nail it.
And so is my assumption correct? You alluded to like they're facing a problem. I mean, is this like an acute pain an organization is facing that they realize like, hey, I need somebody to hit the ground running. I need somebody fractional like ASAP.
Yeah, and it could vary, right? It's kind of interesting. We're coming into August right now, and uh, my years ago in my former lives working full time, I got nervous in September. I mean, the market's always crashed in September, right? And the way I like to explain this is it's usually when the BS hits the fan with sales that they've kind of promised a lot for the year. And Q3 comes up and, it's September and the actual numbers come out, right? So that is an extreme or a crisis. And, acute problems or crisis, those are
Yep.
funny words or interesting words. But what does it mean from a corporate perspective in regards to acute situation or crisis? And usually comes down to an imminent threat. Um, Again, it's very severe words here, but stability or potential harm that needs to be addressed immediately. Right. Another opportunity or kind of characteristic of a crisis or an imminent threat could be a surprise. Something comes up, and it could be a merger, acquisitions, design leadership, product leadership finds out that there's a whole other platform that they're all of a sudden responsible for that they weren't aware of and they didn't plan for at the beginning of the year, and there was no way to know. And then there's another one is a time pressure. And worked in organizations that found out, that they're over budget. And, back to the Q3, the positive side of that, they find out, oh, we've overestimated or underestimated rather, and we have this surplus. And what can we do with? We have to get this done by the end of the year, or we lose our budget for it next year. And that's where a fractional leader can come in and really help.
I imagine a lot of folks listening to the podcast will be nodding their head, specifically fall time, but like, yes, I've experienced all of those, or I'm experiencing them now. So we have this kind of acute problem, we have an acute crisis. We bring in you. Like, what are your top? I don't know if it's a priority. You mentioned stabilization, or is it a process you're going to follow? Like, what are you going to help do to? Or what are your first few steps that you take to assist this organization? As you said earlier, like fractional leaders should be able to come in and hit the ground running. But like, what's that approach look like?
Um, Honestly, it's the basics of a design project, which is you come in and you listen, right? And you have to understand the problem right from the beginning. Play back that problem to whoever's brought you in, and understand their context, and then help frame that problem. You're not there to solve everything, but you're here to solve something within a specific amount of time. So you have to start, I hate the term, but peeling back the onion at this point of figuring out, like, here's all the problems, and this is what I'm hearing, and this is why you brought me in. This is what I can do for you, and this is what I cannot do for you. And back to what I can, this is what I can do in this amount of time. And then peeling back, what are the options here? How you solve that problem comes down to money, resources, and time. And here's what I can do for you for this amount of money and this amount of resources it might be required, or if there's no resources, this is what I can do for you. And frame up that problem back and play it back to the senior leadership or other people who have the authority.
How are you doing that quickly, right? Somebody's bringing you for a crisis, and then your first step, and this is very similar to the design, as you said, the design process, which is we're going to listen, we're going to empathize, we're going to do some research, and everyone's like, no, skip all of that. Here's the problem, go. And it's like fractional. Are you in a spot where it's like they're asking you to produce, and your first step is, I need to listen to the problem? Like, maybe I'm making up a problem that doesn't exist, but does that
Oh no,
challenge exist?
no,
Okay.
Mark, it definitely exists. Like,
Okay.
yeah. One thing I've learned over my career, did a lot of work in strategy, and it's The best thing about strategy, or one thing that it's probably used as like a negative towards strategy. Oh, it's going to take a lot of time, and you're going to, they're going to have to come back in 6 months or something. And
Yeah.
by then, the problem will be done or away. Where I'm going with this is what I've learned is to work iteratively, and this is from my experience of working on agile teams and bringing that kind of experience of working as a group and sharing, like sharing your work as it's on the fly, and not having to come back with this is the final solution. I can't do anything until the final solution. Every meeting I'm capturing information, usually using a digital whiteboard and playing it back to people. This is what I've heard. This is why you brought me in. And that's the business ask. You haven't framed what the actual problem is at that point. So you start working through it and you just keep asking questions and playing it back. Okay, this is what I believe at this stage. I'm not saying that this is the problem, but so far, this is what I believe the problem is. And people don't know what they don't know. And there's the old adage of, from the service design world of ask the question why 5 times, and you'll finally get down to like critical
Yeah.
thinking here of what is the actual problem we're having here. And at a certain point, sometimes it says, no, yeah, they're just like, no, get it done. Okay. Based off of what I've heard, this is what I understand the problem be, and this is how I can help you. Or I'm not the person to help you.
Right. Right. That's always a tough one, right? Which
Yeah.
is, this is not the right situation for me in my role to help you. And I mean, specifically as somebody who's coming in, this is your job is to find organizations to help, right? They find you, and then you're going to step back and be like, no thanks. But
Yeah.
it is a real realization that you can't solve every problem. And if the organization's not set up properly or set up for, and it's not success, I don't know what the right framing is. Like sometimes it's just can't, maybe the situation can't be helped.
True. But there's a lot of other factors that are brought in here, such as the altitude that you've been brought in within an organization. Very different if you've been brought in
Yeah.
by the president versus a senior manager. Okay. That's one. And another one is the type of company we're talking about here. Is it a startup, or is it this a corporate, or a blue chip organization? Right. In those cases, the larger ones, you're talking about challenges that are outside of the silo, right? So what you can bring to the table is you've identified these problems for them, which is value, and you then do an overview of what you think the problems are and what the next steps are, and that is your parting gift as the completion of the project. And that's pretty much for every project. There's never like
Yeah.
it's like, yes, I've completed what I need for you, but by the way, we also found out this other information which I think would be very helpful for you next quarter or next year whenever you're doing your planning. Right.
What's your role in so problem identification, some level of sense of stability within the organization. So you're kind of assessing, you're playing back the problem for them. You're then generating what you think is a solution. Are you then, or series of solutions or series of steps they need to take? Are you then executing those steps?
Uh, Depends on the engagement.
Okay.
I generally prefer to be the one who's there. That the problem is like, I'm trying to remember the fellow's name, but the book is Play Bigger, and it basically states, you really nail the problem when it cannot be unseen anymore,
Hmm.
right? And once you hit that, name that problem, they generally can't let it go. It's a house on fire at this point, right? You've helped them identify, or maybe they've done it,
Yeah.
that they've identified this blocker is going on that is causing quite a bit of friction for the rest of the organization, or the rest of the team.
So that's, I mean, and I'm not asking you to pitch yourself, but I'm happy to pitch you if there's organizations out
Sure.
there. Y- Your role as a fractional product leader is to get to the heart of the problem that this organization faces that maybe they haven't even seen or aren't able to identify. And it's illuminating that for them. That is
Correct.
one of the true values that you're
Yeah, and common in the ones, depending on where they are, could be starting a new product or service, right? They don't understand the client the user as well as they should,
Yeah.
or they have a first draft that, or a first round of their product or service, and they need validation of what's going on in the market, right? Or in the field with it. And then, the second half of that is, they have a product or service that is been around for a while, and they're looking to understand what they need to do next. I can help with that product discovery, and then help frame it up in regards to what the next steps would be and how to implement it. And I'm, the skills that I have is to come in as a lead of maybe they want to spin up a pod or a task force team to further identify those problems, to get to them to the point that they're defined enough that they can be actioned upon. There's a great framework. I always mess up the name, but Serifin. It's a Welsh word. It's a difficult word. I don't know what gentleman picked it, but there you go. And I love this framework because it's about. I do a lot of facilitations and workshops with senior leadership, and this could be, in some cases, 10 people, but I've done up to 40 or 50
Okay.
people. And what we're doing at this point in this session is I've done all the interviews and everything else beforehand with everybody. I've talked to them. I got their information from them. They got their ideas from them. And I prep these workshops that all that information is there at the beginning, that I play it back to them. And we, as a team, and the downside, there's a lot of downsides of the COVID working remotely pandemic. No arguing that.
Yep.
But some of the upsides, I would never believe beforehand that running workshops would be, in my opinion, better online. And the reason why I believe that is because that people who normally would not participate or contribute in person for various reasons, that barrier is gone. And doing a workshop online, presenting this work, and back to the framework I mentioned, having them take each one of those ideas and from their seat, what do they believe? Is this a simple project, problem? Is it a complicated problem, or a complex problem, or chaotic problem? And I'll break those down. In simple, let's use a car analogy. You run out of gas. Well, there are solutions out there for that. You can know there's gas stations, they might be far away, and there's a tow truck if you need it. A complicated problem, maybe you got a flat tire. Okay, you're going to be inconvenienced. You're going to miss a meeting, but there are solutions out there already for that. Complex is the interesting one, which is, your transmission breaks. Well, you're going to lose your car. You don't know how many days. It's going to be in the shop. You're going to have to. You're going to miss meetings and everything else. And then the chaotic problem is your car is on fire. Nothing left of it. It's destroyed. We put those problems in those different buckets, and what we're looking for is the complex ones here, because those are the interesting problems that need to be further defined, but could be actioned with the resources the team has already. Chaotic ones, no, those have to be taken off the table. The team is not being set up for success at this point. And back to the simple and the complicated ones, those ones are the ones that should go to the roadmap, because you do have the existing services for those to do that, the resources and the skills and the expertise. So I can help with that, facilitating that conversation, but then taking it further from there and building it up with the information for everyone to build something that is an actionable engagement to move forward.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thanks for walking through. I love a good framework. I'm going to borrow that and utilize it, because I think podcast I just did was on prioritization, which is, an interesting topic in and of itself. But sometimes it's maybe less about prioritization and organization or
Yeah.
bucketing of items. And I think then saying, like, I love the idea that if it falls into the chaotic, we're gonna we're gonna put that in another bucket. It's in the parking lot, and they can deal with it. But let's find these kind of
Well, it's also assigning to somebody, okay, this has
yeah,
been brought up by the team.
yep,
Who is taking this away
yep.
and building it out? By the way, that framework is from David Snowden. It's a wonderful framework. So
Awesome. We will link to that when we post the podcast. So I appreciate that. How is part of these engagements, and maybe it's kind of part of the fractional services you offer just as you're there, like, are you evaluating the team that's doing the work? Are you helping develop that team, helping them sort of grow? Are you, teach them to fish so that when you're gone, when your fractional role ends, they're doing these exercises? Or are you kind of coming in I'm gonna deal with this crisis and I'm gonna step out. Like, what's your balance between sort of the strategic involvement and maybe the longer term growth of the product organization at a client?
That has been a different beast depending on the engagement.
Okay.
Going into certain organizations, they have the quote unquote maturity model, and they are further along. So back to my altitude may not be at the top where I'm bringing in changing ideas about new frameworks to use or new approaches and new engagement models for the larger organization. But I might be further lower in the altitude where at a pod level, I'm trying to influence the decision making processes and how things are prioritized and bringing best practices to the table. In some cases, just making sure that the basics are being done and covered. Um, that may or may not be involved with. As a fractional leader, I don't deal with HR related issues. I'm not looking at compensation and have those conversations.
Right.
Other organizations that I've engaged with, yeah, after the problem's been resolved and they understand they need a new pod, and I've been asked to lead that or that new initiative. Um, it's either working with existing resources, quote unquote resources, but actual people, and understanding who has the right skill set or who wants to learn the right skill sets for this particular engagement, and or usually it's also helping with recruitment, interviewing processes, and making sure I stand up the team and bringing in the appropriate um, ideas and approaches. Again, every organization, it's very different. Every organization is different. Some organizations have a tried and true approach to things and have never maybe dealt with uh, uh, a merger of bringing in, the company's purchased a competitor or a complementary product, and they need somebody who's going to bridge that gap. It's not a long-term requirement, but they do need somebody, back to those lists of kind of crisis situations, somebody who can, for 6 months to a year or whatever it is, help effectively and efficiently, build the bridge and get that done.
Yeah. And I think quickly in these cases as well. I mean, as you like, go back to the hit the ground running, right? Like standing up CPO role within an organization that doesn't have one but has a product management team is like that's a large structural change, and folks can get immediate benefit from somebody with your skill set that has this kind of strategic lens, assessment, problem finding lens. You're kind of this player coach role, and then helping. In certain cases, it sounds like the organization set up for longer term sort of success.
Yeah, it's uh, providing the appropriate direction.
Yeah.
And back to the old joke, looking at the map and saying danger, dragons be there. Making sure that they're aware. Yeah, not just today, but down the road. If the way you're planning on setting this up, these are the limitations you may hit. I also want to point out something else, and I'm sure you've seen this and learned this before, and especially I see this in smaller organizations or within large organizations. They set up smaller teams or departments. They sometimes overhire, and what I mean by that is they give out titles and those kinds of things. We're talking about the 1 to 5 or 1 to 15 kind of size. And then when they get over 15, or with a large organization, that team, they start trying moving some of those members from that team to a different team or vice versa. The skills don't align, but the titles don't align either. And it causes a lot of problems. So having those conversations and being honest and being frank, and in some cases, not just in those conversations, but also when the senior leader of the product team or the design team can't be in the room with conversations, whether it be about team structure and or dealing with colleagues on the other side of the fence, whether in technology or on the business side or marketing, being the grown up in the room to have the conversation.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. I come from a design background. I work daily with product leaders, clients. Um, what's like? What do you see as the overlapping? We run workshops. We do roadmaps. Like, what do you think are the like overlaps in? I want to say skill sets, inputs, outputs. Like, what are some tips and tricks for aligning design strategy and product strategy and what are successful organizations do in order to have those two groups kind of working harmoniously and out there solving the right problems.
Uh, I don't know, Mark. Maybe you and I should write a book about it. I'm kidding. Uh, that you know, I guess I'll go back in time and talk about a team I led in a very large agency, and we're talking about, I think, forget, we had six or I don't know, something, 6 or 7 floors of people, and used to tell my team that if it takes more than 2 emails
Hmm.
when you're asking a question, get up from your seat, go down that elevator, and go talk to that person. Okay. Nobody picked up their phones at that time, anyways. Everyone was moving to mobile, and nobody answered their desk
Right,
phones.
right.
It's communication. So, I mean, all those things you just talked about there, it's understanding your colleagues and their pain points. I mean, again, with that same team that I talked about, it was a junior team. I didn't have much resources, and I was hiring interns and then training them up. After 3 months, they went to a contract, and after 3 months, I hired them full time if they were, catching, information and willing to learn and working hard, which they all were. Um, what we used to do was, because they hadn't had a lot of experience in presenting to clients, we created together as a team very rough personas about, you're going to be presenting, there's a CMO in the room, this is what their job is, and this is what they care about. Right? They're not caring about how hard you worked on the wireframes, or they don't care about Figma's last conference, those kinds of things, right? So
Right.
back to your point, it's like understanding what the roadmap is and what the decisions were, and there's a lot of challenges when it comes to just labeling of things, right? Just the titles of these projects don't make any sense to people, or if they don't make any sense, ask why. Former boss of mine, great mentor, learned so much from him. There are no stupid questions, especially at the beginning of the project.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to put your hand up and ask a stupid question and label it. I'm the newbie in the room, and I'm going to ask you a really stupid question here. And charting stupid things, especially in larger organizations, acronyms. What are these? You go into these companies, and they speak their own language.
Yeah.
Learning that language, just because they say I have a roadmap, what does it look like, and what does it mean? Try and look for the ins and outs, inputs and outputs. Who, this particular document, let's say it's a roadmap, who were the people that provided the input to this? Names and titles. And what is the output of this? Who does use this, and how does it get used? And yes, it's not going to be perfect, right? Understand that. That's your opportunity to bring some value there. So overlapping skill sets. Yes, it's all the things we learned about running the basics of a good design project, but taking it that extra step further and willing to go spend time and sit down with people. I think one of the best things you can do as you get up and running in the first 90 days, and you start assessing the lay of the land and getting to know these people, and actually go have coffee with them and talk to them about what their needs are and what their pain points are. And then when you have research sessions or anything that you've done later on, that information comes up that you go, this is relevant to that person I spoke to, call them back and send it to that information to them. And that helps build the bridge. They starts breaking down, especially large organizations, there can be an unwillingness to share information. Or as one of my former clients called it, silos of excellence.
That's good as opposed to center of excellence, silos of excellence.
Yes.
It's hard to break those barriers down, and I think it does come down to one-on-one, human to human sort of bridge building, as you said, empathy. I love the idea of kind of the personas. I love the idea of what was the inputs and who created this, what were their titles, who's going to use this, like all of that stuff. I think a lot of times gets just not documented or brushed over, and
Yeah.
people who are doing product, good, solid product and design work are not being set up by their leadership for success, and they're walking into rooms and things don't always go as well. So I just want to ask one final question. It's not hopefully not a curveball, but like I can tell you enjoy this type of work and are passionate about sort of the type of sort of fractional leadership you're providing at organizations of different sizes and with different challenges. But like, give me the top. What's your favorite part about the work you're doing?
Um, I'm gonna say learning.
Mm.
I just really enjoy understanding complex problems and solving them, or working with people to solve them, and learning from that, and learning from everybody that we get to work with every day. We're very, very fortunate to do what we do. And I think that's lost sometimes. I know that for myself, when there's been lulls in my career, I would say I have to remind myself that you know you come a long way, and on top of that, how much you've learned since you started. Um, you're talking about frameworks, and just a simple framework. Write down all those things, your problems and everything else that's going on, and draw a line, put them on the left hand side, draw the center down, saying that is today. Moving forward, what are the things you can learn moving forward with this new project you have that may not be your favorite project? And I'll just throw something else in here as like I posted the other day, just kind of dawned on me because I've been saying this a lot to some of the people that I've coached. Every project or every role I've ever taken has come down to three things, not in this particular order: good people, good work, or good money. And it's got to be one of those three things. Otherwise, why the hell are you doing it?
Yeah.
So I've done work in the past for people I really enjoyed working with. And I thought they were some of the smartest people, nicest people I've ever met, or I really believed in what they were trying to do because they were just really passionate about what they're doing. I've done other projects where I didn't, it was all about the work. I just wanted to work on the project like
Yep.
that. And then there's, quite frankly, other projects where I did it for the money, right? So, and I don't think there's a problem with that. But if you look at your job today and you've got all three of those things, you're incredibly lucky and very fortunate person.
Right on. Well, I think that's a perfect way to wrap up. Thank you for adding that last note there. I think it's invaluable for anybody in any role. If people want to find you, I know I'm connected with you on LinkedIn. Is there anywhere else they can find you?
LinkedIn's the best. Just sparking up my latest rev of my website.
Cool.
I know we were talking about upgrading skills, learning Framer as well. So
Oh, awesome,
yeah,
awesome.
yeah,
Good on you.
we're getting there. We're getting there. So
Well, we will certainly link to your LinkedIn and your website. But Jared, just want to say thank you for your time today. Appreciate the conversation and you sharing your kind of role experience and I think offering some really good nuggets and frameworks for folks that are facing some challenges with in their organization and how they can work through those.
thank you, Mark. I greatly appreciate the time.
You bet. Thank you.
Take care.